It shows Kay as a participant.
I think Kay is muted.
Yeah, she is mute. I don't see her.
We'll just call it to order. If you want to go ahead and start the presentation, we can let's try to get her on.
Okay, if you can hear us, your mic is muted, and if you can, you gotta unmute it before you can talk, and us hear you. It looks like I don't have the option of turning you on manually.
Mm-hmm. And Jameson is muted as well.
Yeah, I muted myself.
How can we get Kay so we can start? I want to be sure everybody.
I think she's on her iPad mini, so I'm really not sure what her interface looks like.
Should I try her cell phone or?
Yeah.
Do you think the host, the host screen can actually manually unmute someone for them?
Is Grant over here?
Grant's in the other room behind.
If Grant could come in, you could tell her.
Can they unmute Miss Kay? Can Grant do that?
Otherwise, is everybody, there's no other muted folks.
And Alice is on now.
Yeah, I think she had a poor connection.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, great.
Good job.
Few maneuvers.
All right.
Okay, I just want to, who all is present today? Since I'm on my iPad mini, I can only see a few people.
Kay, this is Dale. I can read you the participant list. The city, Chris is here.
I was trying to see who's here now.
Chris, Bob Lester, Jameson, and Kelsey and myself, and then, there's several in the city, conference, meeting room.
Okay, great. Okay, well, one thing I would like to say is when Gail, sent out the email, we will table the approval of the minutes until we're sure the committee has read them. And, I just wanted to have on the record for the, minutes that as an update following our last meeting, I polled each committee member after that meeting who was present, and we all agreed that WLA Studio was selected. So, to carry out this project, we're very happy that you're here today and we can get the process started. So, with that, Dale, I'm just turning it over to you.
Okay, and, everybody ready for us to start? Everybody at the city?
Yes.
Okay. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna review, what we're gonna present today. Chris Jackson, who is a historic preservation specialist at WLA Studio and has been involved with the Silvertown project, will be, starting off by talking about what interpretive opportunities we have, with the memorial, taking into consideration the rich history of Silvertown and also its association with World War II both from the perspective of the veterans of that war and also the home front that supported them. Then I'm going to come back into the program and share with you inventory and analysis findings. I made a site visit in December, and I'll talk first about the whole context of the whole park, and then zero in on the site itself. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time trying as a group to determine what we want the program for this public for this public art memorial to be. And by program, I mean what uses do we see happening here? And at that point, I'd like to stop and have a group discussion. I'll offer some program ideas, but then I want to, hear from the group what your ideas are on the program. And then also, this will be a time to ask any questions about what Chris and I have presented on other, items as well. One thing with this virtual, it's kind of hard to just take questions as we go. So if we can save questions to group discussion, I think that'll be a little bit more orderly. Then Kelsey Brooks, who's a landscape architect at WLA, who's assisting with the design aspects and graphic illustration aspects of this project, is going to close our presentation just talking about general design principles that we will be using as we go into site design. And from what we've gained today, we propose coming back with design concepts. And we'll also, after Kelsey, offer some time for additional discussion. And if there's not any other questions, we'll answer whatever. And then I'd like to close with next steps and also offer a schedule for going forward. So with that, I'd like to now turn it over to Chris.
Great, thanks, Dale. And bear with us with all this technology stuff. But my name's Chris. I have spent kind of a pretty good amount of time studying Thomaston's history, especially in the last year and a half or so, related to the textile industry during the 20th century. I'm personally pretty excited about exploring different interpretive opportunities for the public memorial at the Greatest Generation Park. The evolution and sort of development of the community and landscape in and around Thomaston it's unique, and it's also representative of broad patterns of our collective history, which the community actually recently demonstrated through the process of achieving the National Register listing for Silvertown. And Thomaston really has some cool resources, including the park, that express the community's legacy, and as at the local scale as well as beyond. Indeed, having the opportunity to honor that local heritage through creative design is an exciting prospect. And I'm going to just give you guys what I hope is a quick but revealing rundown of our team's thought process for interpretation, at least the interpretation side of the design process. And when designing things like memorials or commemorative spaces, one creative way we might try to enhance the public space while honoring a community's legacy is to study the landscape's culture and physical evolution, and then allow that analysis to inform the design process. And luckily, there are a lot of resources available for study for this site specifically, including historic aerial images, old photographs, road maps, architectural plans and drawings like you see here. And these are just a few of the kind of cool images we can use to see how the landscape of the park has changed over time through its various uses. And on the left here, you see Draper's, Earl Sumner Draper's 1929 plan for Silvertown. This is an excerpt of it. I kind of roughly dotted the outline of the park, and you see on his plan that the ponds are on there, and they're actually set in this sort of this pastoral landscape. And Draper's roads and the house lots and community and commercial spaces respond to the natural topography. So these are just kind of the kind of things that we can learn from history documents and those sort of things. And here's an example of the type of analysis we might conduct. Essentially, these are snapshots of the past, and they're invaluable tools for us because as historians and as designers, they tell us so much. And by the time Draper became involved with the design at Silvertown, there was peach orchards that had been planted in what's now the sort of east and south parts of the Greatest Generation Park. I know it's probably hard to see on your screens, but if you zoom into these photographs, there's all kinds of things you can learn. This series of photographs sort of documents the growth of those trees, and you can see the peach orchards in some other photos I'll show you, but especially interesting how the orchards impose a grid, or like a formal grid on the otherwise informal landscape. And elsewhere in these images, you can see open areas and natural forests mingling with the built landscape, and you can see a natural progression of forest over time in these thicker areas. So lots of little things that we can pull out of the history of the landscape. And of course, peach trees are long gone now at the park grounds, but these bird's eye views, if you will, tell us a lot about the site and what it was like and how it was used historically. Bottom image, I laced together two photos taken in 1929 from standing on top of Martha Mill when it was being expanded by BFG in 1929, and these are super high resolution. You can zoom way in. And one thing you might notice is besides the peach orchards that kind of extend into Draper's design features, which I'll just let me put on the pointer. You can see the entry feature here, and you can see all these roads radiating out. Peach orchards. You might notice that there's only one pond. That's a big thing that changes at the site. And you see these trees growing up over time. There's also a really interesting feature up here in this open area that I'll mention later. So just try to remember that for a minute. So other things we see, if you look really closely, it's never ending, it seems. And so regarding more broad patterns of history and community, it's hard to think about Thomaston without thinking about textiles and mill villages. But the context of the commercial center of Thomaston is also important. We use historic documents like maps and manuscripts, as well as images to learn things. And on the right of the screen here, I've got two Sanborn fire insurance maps. And at first glance, they may seem pretty similar between 1885 and 1920. The gridded layout of the streets is the same. The commercial core is in the middle with a courthouse in the middle. But if you look a little closer, you notice the color change. From yellow on these Sanborn maps means timber framed, whereas the pink or red is a fireproof building, and that's in quotes, fireproof. They were, it's a masonry constructed building with sprinklers, for instance. And these maps tell us all kinds of things. And one thing to notice is there's a lot of houses surrounding downtown in the 1880s. But then, by 1920, you see an almost total change of downtown. Whereas it looks kind of close, but if you give it a tighter look, you'll see that over time change. And of course, we also have to think about people, and that's one of the biggest pieces of the commemorative landscape often is the people who have been through the historic events and how they've experienced their lives as the community has evolved over time. And often the type of research that I think that creates good design is holistic, and it's aimed at gaining an understanding of the whole story. So research topics like agriculture, government, church, social, civic, clubs, businesses, schools, recreation, these are all the kinds of things that we hope to help inform the design at this And this is just a really cool one. Most of these images come from the pictorial history of Upson County, and these over here are actually from the Silvertown Port, but this image I thought was really cool. This is right after World War II. It's showing the Tri-Cities bus system or their new buses, because apparently around this time it was especially hard to get fuel and a lot of people didn't have cars, and so this was a very lucrative time for the Tri-City bus group, and so I just love that image. And I'll just leave it kind of with you for Dale and Kelsey to kind of finish up, but lastly, what I find to be one of the more important or most important pieces of the puzzle to me is how we move beyond that analysis and research into the actual design and implementation to create interesting and provocative spaces and places. And Dale and Kelsey will discuss the details of how that's done in a minute as we develop the program too, but I wanted to leave you guys with this quote about this word interpretation, which in the context of commemorative design sort of means generally the way a space or place reveals a larger truth to those who experience it. And personally, I think the best design spaces are those that transcend the past and the present in their ability to provoke the viewer and capitalize on their curiosities, rather than simply presenting hard facts. And I'll pass it to Dale, but one last thing I wanted to show you was this feature over here, which you guys see the ponds over here, but this feature is no longer in the landscape, and it's something that is very intriguing to our group. I still know basically nothing about it, and I hope that all of you know a bunch and you can teach us, because I'm just fascinated by it. So at some point, pass along any information if you guys have it. And with that, I'll pass it along to Dale.
What picture was that?
Thanks, Chris. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and start by talking about the physical aspects of the site. And what I'd like to do is start with looking at the entire park and then zero in on the site for this public art memorial. The first, the map that you see on the left, let me start there. And starting at the northwest corner, which is up at the upper left, you can see that area noticed at Woodland. And you remember in Chris's aerial images, that had the existing woodland at the time that Draper began his work in Silvertown. And then immediately right up there, the pine thicket is where the peach trees were located. And over time, successional pines came in and created the woods that we have today. And then below that, kind of in that reddish color, is what's known as the hilltop zone, and that's the high point of the park. And in fact, the park slopes off from that hilltop in both directions, south and north. But the hilltop is where the reservoirs, ponds are located. And then down below that is an open area and what I'd like to do now is just talk about how those areas have been developed, starting with the master plan in 2005. This open area is really the active, sort of the active center of the park, as you know. And the images that I show above to the right there show you that there's the pavilion is there, the playground is there, the splash pad is there. You've got restroom parking, drop-off area. One thing I want to note in the upper left image, you see the word design axis. One thing I first noticed when I was doing the site visit back on a cold day in December is that there's a bench at the very bottom of that open space. And if you look where that bench is placed, there's really a line that goes through that part of the park, an axis line that goes right through the middle of the splash pad, through the pavilion, and then up the middle of the steps that takes you to the eastern pond. And so this design access is an important element for us to think about. And that same axis goes to the proposed site that we'll be talking about in just a minute. But the design of this area was very That's how this woodland is being used. And then the last area is the hilltop area. Next slide. And here we have the most prominent, the very prominent water feature. And on the upper right, that's a view into the perimeter, it's a perimeter walkway around the eastern pond. And on the cold December day I was there, if you look way into the background, you can see a single pedestrian walking around the pond that day. And even on that cold December day that I was there was a lot of people using the park, informally strolling, as well as people coming and having their lunch, and even a few kids using the playground. And then the lower image shows you the eastern pond, the western pond, which is used for fishing. And then on the lower right, this is a view along the part of the park adjacent to Church Street, and sort of back on the right of this image is where the Blue Star Monument is located. So we're generally kind of in the area where the project site for this project is located. So the next image will zero in. Okay, so now we've still got the entire park context there on the left, but you can see that axis that I spoke about. So there in that area that's bubbled in the yellow, you can see the dark circle is the water tower. And so this is the area that we're generally looking at. And, it's pretty much when I ask people when we're proposing on this project, where's the project site, the Blue Star Monument, the Blue Star marker was always given. It's in the vicinity of the Blue Star marker. And I think there are a lot of opportunities here, but I also think there's some challenges that we have to think about. On the upper right image, you see the highway that's adjacent to it in the development. There are vistas into the site, and there's also vistas out. There's also road noise. So we think about a ceremonial and contemplative landscape design. We've got to make sure, we create a space that recognizes what the noise level is, and maybe we want to move back a little for that. We've also got a lot of opportunities with pleasant views looking toward the pond, the eastern pond, or especially looking north into the pine thicket. So this is generally the site that we'll be working on, and at our next meeting we'll come back with design concepts for this area. So with that, I'm now going to shift to programming. And I want to just start by saying anytime our company does a project, we always like to build on a lot of the work that's been done in the past. And I was able to obtain copies of the 2005 master plan, which is on your website. And then I was also able, in the 2005 master plan was done by Jordan, Jones, and Goulden, which has got another name now, but back in 2005, they did the original master plan. And later, John Benson and Associates, JD plus A, did the plan that's on the left. And Steve Provost from the company that now John Benson turned into Barge has been doing work since 2013. And so I was able to get copies of both of these master plans. And so I looked at the master plans and looked at the elements that have been proposed throughout the park. But I thought, what things are relevant that have been proposed in the past or proposed as part of this project that we might think of as far as program elements? And when I say program elements, again, how do you want this space to be used? How do you want it to look and feel? So, and we'll have a discussion about that. Let me just run through these quickly. One of the things that JB plus A recommended was art in the landscape. And they noted the limestone G, which is one of the architectural artifacts that came from the demolished mill building. And we do know that there are other architectural artifacts in the park landscape today. So there are opportunities for incorporating some of this art into the landscape. There was an informal amphitheater suggested by JB plus A, and they even envisioned, and this was just an amphitheater that was molded by the topography of the land, not like, structural seating or anything, but just using landscape. And in their plan, their master plan, they suggested kind of opening a larger area in the middle of the park. Both master plans recommended outdoor classroom space just tucked into the woodland, and these would be in that area, to give it a little bit, you know, kind of tie it down to a location that puts it in a little bit more focal point. JV Plus A had a great lawn, extension of that amphitheater area, and they also proposed a flag court over, beside Church Street. And then, the memorial, was an important part of, JJ&G's plan, and they had basically shown a memorial landscape, up by the east pond, and they basically had a home front memorial, separated by a formal lawn, and then a WW2 memorial, and then a memorial pavilion. And so they had kind of put it all together. Well, as you know, what really happened is, you know, the pavilion got built in that southern area, and so now this earlier concept of having a memorial is 15 years later now being realized. So, this is just what we throw out as ideas. So if we go to the next slide, what I would like to do now is just show you suggestions that we made, kind of from that list, and adding some other things as well. So what we would suggest for park program elements would be that first, it is a public art memorial to honor the WW2 veterans and the home front community that supported them. We do think there's opportunities for art in the landscape, you know, and a lot of different forms of art, but definitely trying to incorporate some of these extant architectural details. Maybe play in a more prominent location for the Blue Star Memorial, I think, is a good idea. Maybe we can incorporate this more into the project. It should be a space for contemplation. It should be a space for gathering and ceremonies. And I don't see these as being large gatherings, but I think it would be nice. I know when I talked with Kay, I know there have been some local ceremonies held at the Blue Star marker, so I think it would be nice that we consider this. Lawn face and a flag court are some other opportunities. One thing I did not mention, and I need to add this to right now, is that when I was at the site, the project site, all of a sudden you'll notice here comes a truck from the city coming through the landscape. So we have to also be able to accommodate maintenance vehicles and service vehicles, you know, coming through this area. So I even just had another idea as I think about this list. So at this point, I'd love for people to unmute themselves, and I would love to, and I know it's hard on a WebEx call like this, but well, you know, if you hear somebody speaking, let's try to let one person get their thoughts out. But I'd like some reaction to this program list, because I think it's very important. We need a final program of what you want before we do the design. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any suggestions if been missing. Hey, I don't want crickets here. Let's speak up. Does the list make sense? Let's start with that.
The what?
Does the list of the program elements make sense?
It does.
They mix to me.
Is there anything anybody feels you are not including that needs to be included?
This is Bob Fletcher. It's unscientific. I'm not a forester, but I know enough about trees to know what the different types of pine trees that are made of. In that pine area over there, those are called slash pines. And there was a time back years ago that the thought was to plant slash pines around in this part of Georgia so
very helpful. Other comments or thoughts?
Can you show me again, so those are the elements that you would include in a plan and maybe think those out and expand them. Can you show me, can you flip back to the, little map and show me where that lawn space, where you see that lawn space?
Yeah, sure. Can we go back one, Chris? Yeah. Now, are we talking about okay, the lawn space with, JJ&G's plan is just a long rectangular space. Can you put the orange thing on it, Chris? It's up there for the eastern, yeah, come on in right there. It's, you see where the leader line's going to.
Where it says Great Lawn.
Yeah, there's a thing referred to as the Great Lawn, and it would,
Yeah, great one. Now that is just proposed in JV plus A's plan, and I think what they were proposing is just opening up a larger area in the center of what's really a wooded area now, or a lot of that is wooded. So that is just on their plan, that is not anything that got implemented. On JJ&D's, it was a much smaller lawn.
huh. And that square to the left of that is where that gentleman's house was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. So really that Great Lawn is what dips down to that area where Patrick is.
Yeah, Randy Falls is where the amphitheater is. The Great Lawn, right about where that arrow's pointing, there's a big sewer manhole sitting right there that's above grade. And that walking trail we built kind of transects, right through that area.
Yeah, one thing, what's it called, retention area is kind of in the middle of what that informal amphitheater lawn is.
Yeah, that's not a retention area. We don't know what that is.
It looks like a primitive retention area, but it's
Yeah, it's been there a long time.
yeah.
So anyway, these are the two master plans, so we're just trying to, build on what they have recommended. So any other questions?
No, ma'am?
Go back to
And
the list.
I think some of the questions.
Sure.
Okay. So this is the list we currently have, and at this point, any more suggestions for it?
Can I ask you a question? Where do you envision maybe, I mean, this list looks realistic to me and good, but where do you envision the space for gathering and ceremonies might be?
Well, go back to one more slide, Chris. And another slide, sorry. Okay, right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this area that's in yellow. That's the area we've really identified, it's a high point that flows into the pine thicket, so we've got sort of a hilltop zone, and then we have a more sloped zone.
Right.
And so the question that you're asking right now, we're gonna be answering that in our next presentation.
Okay.
Because we'll come back with firm design concepts, and what we'll do in the next presentation, we'll give you alternatives, and then the final presentation will be a final design that you select out of these different options.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's where we're going. And in just a minute, Kelsey will, provide some just general guidelines, sort of foundation for what we're thinking about in the design without tying it to the land yet.
You keep referring to a list, and on my screen it said ideas, and below the word ideas is wrong.
Okay, that was for us to fill in. Go, back to that one, Fred, and I'll tell you the list. The list I'm showing, see the suggestions list on the left.
Yeah, okay.
That's the list that we had developed, so the ideas is for us to fill out in conversation.
I thought I was missing something in that,
No, sorry, I should have pointed that out. Good question, though, very good question.
In a normal meeting, we might have, an in-person meeting, we might sticking these up on that white space on a board in front of us, but,
Why?
you know,
We're still,
doing our best with what we have here.
so at this point, what I would like to propose, are there any other questions about anything else that we presented so far? And if not, I'll turn it over to Kelsey. Okay, well, why don't we proceed on, and then we have, time for, discussion at the end as well. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna switch places, so Kelsey's gonna be in my spot. She's gonna be driving this.
We're trying to make it where people don't have to wear masks when they sleep. All these challenges.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Good.
Okay. All right, hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Kelsey, and I'm just gonna talk pretty broadly about some design elements and design principles that we're considering as we move into this conceptual design process. So it's gonna be a lot of summarizing of what Daniel and Chris already talked about and how we can interpret those existing elements and those historical elements so that they're legible on the landscape. So, like Dale and Chris discussed, there are lots of opportunities, interpretive opportunities. So the area has a really rich history and a treasure trove of historic documents and images that we can look to for inspiration. So our guiding design principle is really going to build on what came before. And that's going to be with a design that unifies the existing features on the landscape, it's people to look at, and is peaceful to experience. One thing that really stuck out to us was how historic plans really showcase a lot of these curvilinear lines. Curvilinear lines are in the plans, you know, citywide view. There are also small scale and small scale features and pathways, that sort of thing. This curvilinear character also extends into the existing features of Greatest Generation Park. You can see that in some pathways, in the walls, and the stairs, even the playground equipment. And we intend to utilize existing design vocabulary, this language of curvilinear elements, and use that into our proposed memorial. So once the conceptual design process is underway, these historic design elements might take shape in new ways, like through new pathways or new planting areas or site features. These are just a few examples of how that might manifest. Moving forward, conceptual ideas from past master plans really promote this idea that this site should foremost function as a commemorative site and a space for passive recreation. So we want to build on that idea and create a place for rest, peace, and remembrance. And in order to achieve that, we think it's really important that the proposed memorial rests lightly on the land. And that's going to be a lot like other park features, like the walking trail and the black thicket. They're both very beautiful in their simplicity and in their tranquility. And we think that subtle intervention is really what's going to enhance the contemplative atmosphere of the park, and that it's the best direction with which to take this project in order to honor veterans of the home front and of World War II, and just be the most cost-efficient method as well. So we have the opportunity to look to past memorials, which humbly pay respect and inspire contemplation for our design inspiration. These are just a few examples. Obviously, they're much larger in scale of what we're going to be working on, but there are great examples of memorials that speak volumes while still resting lightly on the land. So then we've got the National Flight 93 Memorial, we have the Virginia War Memorial, and then the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Also, And these are a few examples of how, just some examples of what I'm thinking, like, you've got that interesting water tower and, there's potential there to do something cool with that. These are some fun examples of that. Speaking on a smaller site-specific scale, Chris discussed how the area of the proposed memorial was once cultivated as peach orchard. So we see a cool opportunity to incorporate peach trees into the design, and that could further interpret this history for visitors. And Earl Sumner Draper, the landscape architect and planner that was a mastermind behind the city, he used a double row of street trees in his plans for the city. So we thought it could be cool and help achieve that contemplative atmosphere that we're looking for in the memorial landscape if we were to plant peach trees behind the existing crepe myrtle trees along US 19, and that can help enhance site interpretation and contemplate or contribute to a contemplative soundscape. And we intend to further extend repetition, unification, design principles into every little detail that we're thinking of. So that could be the paving patterns, just replicating this interesting diagonal paving pattern in the memorial landscape. And you can see that the diagonal pattern is also in something as small as the cast concrete caps to the columns. We can also incorporate existing site furniture. That's another way to unify the memorial with the existing landscape. And if you notice this bench here in the top right slide, or the top right photo, that's actually the starting point for the design access that Dale mentioned earlier.
Top left.
Top left, sorry. The 2005 master plan classifies the proposed location for the memorial landscape as a hilltop character area. So we see a lot of potential as well for harnessing that hilltop character and creating some interesting overlooks from the memorial. So those overlooks could really highlight certain viewsheds, particularly the woodland area and the reservoir area. So this is just the look into the woodland area that we might choose to highlight, or into the reservoir area. And that's kind of all I have to talk to you guys about today. So I think now we're going to jump into some group discussion. If no one wants to take back over.
Sure, I'll be glad to just ask if there are any more questions about anything we presented today, and then I'd like to close with talking about proposed schedule for our next meeting.
Well, I just want to say what Kelsey just went over, it's real exciting for many of the aspects that she mentioned. And I guess you just have to come up with a little plan or option, and then make decisions based on that, because I can see all these big great.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I will add to that too is we're very cognizant of the budget for this project, and so when you bring back alternatives, we want to be presenting things that can meet the budget that we have as well. And our goal is to give you a final design that can be built with available budget.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's an important consideration as well. But the next meeting will be really zeroing in on the design options and getting you guys to help select what you think is right for this space. So I guess we want to make sure everybody's fine with the space that we're showing, that we'll move forward with design there, and everything that we've shared today. If there are any more questions, we're happy to answer, and if not, I'll be glad to suggest a schedule moving forward.
Any other comments from anyone?
Can I ask a question?
and you probably covered it. But, Dale, I think you were talking about with the hilltop area, in the beginning you were saying there's a lot of potential for using the area, but there are some challenges that come with it.
Yeah.
Okay. What were some of those?
The challenges to me is, you know, when you talk about a memorial and contemplative landscape, and you've got the roadway, you've got to think about how far do we need to get back from the road. And in fact, when I was on the site, and I met Kay there, we first began at the Blue Star marker and realized, I don't think we could do it right there because, you know, you can hardly hear somebody else talk. You know, we walked back kind of halfway between there and the water tower, it got where we could have a conversation. And so as we think about the design, that'll be one of the things is making sure we're placing this in a place where, you know, it has some quiet to it so people can hear one another. And also, you know, we may go even a little deeper into the woodland as part of the project area where it might even get much quieter. So we'll look at those aspects. So that would be one challenge. And then the second challenge to me is the water tower. I mean, you've got this huge, you know, utility structure right there and sort of trying to work with it. And I think that's why we showed, you know, some options that, you know, maybe even some decorative painting or something might sort of enliven that. So, you know, we're sort of throwing out all sorts of ideas at this point in the process. So did that answer? Those are the two challenges I see. And Chris and Kelsey, jump in if there's others.
I was gonna just say, you know, we didn't want to give you guys too terribly much, like, design stuff right now because we wanted to stimulate y'all's thought process, but we also don't want to, you know, draw conclusions in this design too early in the process. So, you know, we need the program to be outlined before we can continue doing that.
Good point.
I really agree with you about the noise there. Allison, I've come and we play tennis on those courts quite often, and the street noise is, I mean, it's horrendous, to be honest with you. I didn't realize it was that noisy until we started playing down here.
Well, that's a good point. So that's something we're certainly recognizing and trying to make sure we place this in the right location.
Well, Dale, you've given us a lot to think about, and I like your approach and how you study from, really, I guess you could say ground zero, up to what we want done to add and to enhance the park, given the, you know, the public art project. So, I think it's exciting.
Good. Well, any more questions, anybody? If not, I'll be glad to suggest a schedule and see if that'll work for everybody. Okay?
Hey Dale, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I wanted to ask Kelsey and Chris, and I haven't seen them, but I remember them. Some of those pieces of, I don't know whether they're limestone or concrete, that are kind of artistic features that were in the building. And I guess there might be some concepts as to how they might be incorporated into something.
Yeah, Chris, Kelsey, why don't y'all take that?
Yes, so we actually have images of those on the former mill. We intend to utilize those in the design. We just, since we're not onto the nitty-gritty design process yet, we're not sure how they're going to be incorporated, but we see a lot of potential in either putting them in maybe in the ground plane or incorporating them onto a seat wall. I'm planning to go to the site this weekend to check them out in person and take some measurements, so that could help put us in one direction or the other. Also, I want to see what the material is, because I'm not sure how they could withstand like a lot of foot traffic, for instance, if we were to put them in the ground plane. So we
No, he's retired now. He's re-
Okay, I think, I thought he had stored some of those, artifacts or the fragments from the buildings in a building somewhere in addition to those that are outside. Do you know?
I think they're somewhere. I think we can probably find out exactly where everything is inventory wise.
Okay,
Oh, cool.
I think there could be other,
Well,
fragments.
hey, that would be really, that, and also, I mean, Russell as well, that could be really good information that we need immediately, because Kelsey, when she goes to the site, this weekend, one of her tasks is to measure the pieces that are still in the landscape, and some of those are cracked, and for us to know kind of the condition of them. So if there's some that have been stored in, weather protected locations, they would probably be really strong candidates. So, if we could get that information as soon as possible, that would be great.
We can check
Yeah,
with-
and
we'll check
I'll
with
just
Gil.
say, having looked at the historic photographs of Martha Mill, there's likely better pieces that have been left over from it, like more interesting pieces. Those are kind of the ones in the worst shape. So if there are some inside, it's likely that they may be even cooler and in better shape.
We'll check and get Mr. Gill to get with y'all and like locations and exact inventory maybe.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what was being said.
I think we can get Ms. Gale to get with, see if we can get in touch with Randy and get the
Okay.
inventory and location for some of that stuff.
Okay, great. That would be real helpful. And I have a couple of questions about drainage pipes and things like that, but I'll direct those to the city. I just wanna make sure about the infrastructure out.
Yeah, I'd asked Russell about that a while ago. He said that we have survey of where that stuff's at. If we're not hitting or building something over a pipe that we might need access to soon or something.
Well, we can follow up.
Kelsey, what day are you coming?
I'll be there tomorrow.
Okay. Do you know what time you might be at the park, or have any idea?
Let's see. I plan to leave here around 9, so maybe a little before lunch.
Okay. Do you know where those pieces are? Yeah. We'll try to get Gail to research where those other pieces might be stored at.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay. And if you can't make that happen by tomorrow, that's fine. Basically, we could just have some pictures and measurements. We can, this will be a conceptual plan, so it won't be like construction documents yet. So just knowing about the availability and the size would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay,
We should be able to find that, I hope.
good, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We keep turning up good stuff, so I don't wanna shorten it, cut this off.
Well, Jim, at one time we talked about the words of some of the, veterans.
Yeah.
It could maybe incorporate those somehow, but I don't know if that's getting too far adrift or.
Yeah.
Chris, do you have thoughts on that?
I don't think that's too far adrift at all. I think that's really interesting and intriguing. There's definitely some things going on in my head, you know, when you say that we could use, on the landscape, and we talk about being light on the landscape, you know, words could be a part of the design. So yeah, that's awesome. And if you have specific things you're thinking of, you know, shoot them our way.
Okay.
Okay, that makes me think of that book you told me about. Velma Thompson.
Oh, Elmer Thompson,
Yeah.
yes.
In fact, I made a note about that. That's something, I'll share that with Chris. That's probably a good lead for what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay? And Jameson, you may have some other ideas on that as well. You know, opportunities for some, you know, first-hand account or, you know, floats, et cetera. So, good, okay?
Yeah, Chris, I can get with you, or I don't know how you want to go about it.
Yeah, no, that'd be fine. Just email me directly. Yeah, fine.
Okay, that sounds good.
Good. Okay. Well, would you like now to share a schedule going forward and see if this works for everybody?
Great.
Okay. Okay, so after today's meeting, what we thought we would do is we'll, make a PDF of the presentation today and, you know, copy that to everyone that was invited to the, call today. And then we'd really like to encourage everyone to let us know something by January 19th. If you have any other ideas, any other thoughts or questions, and for the program, just make sure the program is what you want it to be. Because after the 19th, you can kind of move forward with the design, using that as our final, program. And I'll include the schedule. Then what we'd like to do is, because since Friday afternoon seems to be good for everyone in the city, is having a meeting on January 28th to share design alternatives, and then on February 12th, coming back with the final design and process. So at this point, I will put that out as a proposed schedule and what we'll send you hopefully on Monday. And if anybody, you know, we can nail that down between the city and the park committee to make sure that works for everybody.
That sounds good. Are there
Good.
any comments about this, or? Those dates,
Those dates seem fine for us, I think so far. We're excited of seeing this, keeping going and seeing actual stuff coming out and what it's gonna look like and actually getting it built and seeing it out there and people using it.
I'm really excited about everything I talked about.
Yeah.
Oh, good to hear.
Looking forward to seeing the design.
So, was that a question? I'm sorry.
No,
Well, that's all we have.
okay. Well, thank you, Dale and, Chris and Chelsea. That was a really great presentation, and you've given us a lot to think about. And, like Dale said, if anyone has any suggestions prior, you know, send it to them prior to January
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right.